Today's guest is Art Costello, host of Expectation Theory. Art
Therapy.
Expectation Therapy, my bad. He's a mental health counselor, entrepreneur, and blogger. Welcome to the show, Art.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and this should be fun.
Yeah, so give us a background, how you got started. It says you're a Marine in Vietnam, so I want to thank you for your service.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah, so
My,
where'd you grow up and how'd you get going with expectation theory?
my story is really kind of a long, drawn out story, but I'll try to keep it as condensed as I can. But it really started when I was a little boy, and I was 9 years old, and we moved from urban New Jersey to a very, very, very rural farm in upstate New York that my mom pretty much on her own decided to buy for what knows what reason, what it was. But what happened was when we moved up there, everything prior to that, I had lived in a beautiful home in New Jersey. I played baseball incessantly. I loved baseball. I was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. I actually attended Don Larson's perfect game in 1956.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
Watched Don Larson and the Yankees beat my Dodgers, broke my heart. But baseball was pretty much my identity. It was who I was at a really young age because all of my relatives were just grooming me to play baseball. My heart was set on being a Major League Baseball player. Well, at 9, my mom decides to move us to this rural farm. And it was so isolated, not only uh, geographically, but actually socially. I had no neighbors, nobody to play with. It was, our neighbors were 3 miles away and they were in their late 80s and had a dairy farm. And, it was just so what's the word I'm looking for? So foreign to
Mm-hmm.
everything I had known. So I went and when we moved there, the house was dilapidated. It was a mess. This was almost unlivable. And it was such a drastic change. But the really big thing that happened is that when we moved there, we became outsiders. The community around us didn't accept us. They pretty much shunned us. And it just left me so isolated, alone, and depressed that I started going to heal myself, or unconsciously. I didn't have a conscious thought, oh, I'm going to go heal myself at 9 years old. But I would just be in tears a lot of times because I was so lonely and depressed and hurt. I would go up to the top of this mountain and I would lay on my back and I'd have this conversation with God and the universe. I would just speak into the sky. I had been raised Catholic, so I believed in God. And I just spoke to him. And one day I just heard this voice that just said, listen, you just be you. Just do what is right and just keep being you and you'll find your way. So after many, many trips up and down that hill, I actually began to believe that. I began to believe that I controlled my destiny. It was me that was in control. And at 17, I decided to join the Marine Corps after I graduated high school and went in the Marine Corps, and of course ended up in Vietnam and survived Vietnam. Great Vietnam stories about helping orphans over there and all that. Tried to make the best of every situation. Got out of the Marine Corps, decided to go to college. Went and worked in psychology field, worked at Mercy Mental Hospital in San Diego. And really life started to really take off for me. I went to work in the entertainment industry, worked with some of the biggest names in the music industry, and just really, really everything was going great. And in 1972, I met this cute little blonde in San Diego, and she stole my heart. And we started dating, and I asked her to marry me, and she told me she wouldn't marry me because I was in the music business.
What?
She she didn't want any part of it. She was very grounded, very common sense, beautiful blonde, blue-eyed, and anyway, I was in love with her, so I wanted to marry her. So I walked away from a budding career in the music industry. I mean, I was up for several positions in major record label companies and had really worked my way up through it and was respected for what I did and all that. And I just walked in and walked away from everything and went to San Diego and said, I've quit. Will you marry me? and she said she would. So we spent the next 35 years just really building a beautiful life with great kids and all those things. I started a new business. And in 2003, the love of my life was diagnosed with ovarian cancer.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear.
Yeah, and then in 2006, she passed away after she fought it really hard. And it left me so devastated that I just went and started drinking and cavorting and just I fell apart. I guess
Right.
that's the best way to do it. I just fell apart.
Understandable.
So yeah, it really is and it really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's two sides to everything. So anyway, I spent about 2.5, 3 years just being a jerk and not doing the things that I wanted to do and not being who I was. And my kids came to me and said, Dad, you promised Mom you wouldn't do this. She told us that you might do this, and you promised her you wouldn't, and you're doing it. That night, I went out onto the lawn of our ranch outside of Austin in Dripping Springs and laid on my back and had that conversation again with my maker. And I asked, well, what is going to become of me again? And again, I heard a voice that just said, hey, I've given you all the tools, you just need to use them. I was so invigorated by hearing that familiar voice and hearing that voice of reason that I literally got up from that and started writing the book, Expectation Therapy. And when I started reflecting on my life, I realized that I've always had the expectation that everything's going to work out just the way it's according to plan. That's the way it's supposed to be. And I've always had this strong faith and belief in that. And I believe that that's what's driven me to where I've just been very fluid and accept things, and I just learned a way to deal with things. So when I started looking back, I started putting together all the elements that went into me being the way that I am and how I'm able to accept things. And out of it came Expectation Therapy, which is basically a 3-step program that identifies, clarifies, and solidifies with a written plan what you want for your life and how you want to handle things. And when I started implementing it with other people, because I've always been a counselor and a coach. I've always helped try to bring out the best in people. But when I really started focusing on it and trying to bring people to be all that they can be, I started seeing extraordinary results. And I realized that our expectations and how we expect is so critical to our human behavior, because we only see our expectations through 2 lenses, one of faith and one of fear. If we see fear, and another way I put it is either you see him through positivity or you see him through negativity. If you see it through negativity, everything stops. That's what stops people from being who they are. Fear puts us into this mode. I know right now you're going through some medical issues, and I know that fear arises out of that.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you can learn, if you can take from what I'm telling you, that, because I've had medical issues, I've been had medical issues with my wife with the cancer. If you can learn that no matter what goes on with you physically, and you accept it and just believe that every moment that you are given is a gift and you use those moments, I believe that you'll start to heal yourself. I think you'll start to see things in a different light. I think things just change.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I've done that in my own life. So I have this strong belief in it. But basically, that's what expectation therapy is. And it really has helped a lot of people get through different things. And one of the things that I promote is if we can teach our children how to expect, they will learn how to handle things much better. It's managing your expectations. We are always going to have positive and negative expectations. You can't change that. We're going to have them. It's how you manage them that makes the biggest difference.
And how do you define like an expectation? How do you can tell what somebody's expectation is of you or of yourself? I guess that might be the identifying portion.
Excellent question. Best question you could have asked. It does not matter what other people expect of you. It does not matter. What matters the most is what your core expectations are. And when I speak of expectations, I'm always talking about the expectations that you have. We're going to have expectations from society. We have laws. We are expected to follow the speed limit, put our seatbelts on, go to school, do the things, and all that. That's why right now is such turmoil with the pandemic going on, because no one knows what to expect.
Right.
And what we should be concentrating on is how we expect, making the best of every moment that we have at home right now, or whatever your circumstances are, making the best of that situation and learning from it, because everything we do is a learning experience. So when I talk about expectations, and my definition of them is, it's what your core expectations are. When you can define your core expectations, it will transform your life. And that's what we do in the identifying portion of expectation therapy. We spend a lot of time identifying what your core expectations are. And I hope you're listening.
Is that certain categories like health, wealth, happiness, love?
No, I think your core expectations are, well, I'll give you an example. Mine are integrity, communication, and connection. Those are three of my big ones. Connecting with people, loving people, communicating with them, and then the integrity, which I always think is the most important part of everything. So if you start with the basic portion of integrity, and you learn to live that integrity, and your core expectations are non-negotiable. Once you set them, they're yours. No one can take them away from you. They know no prejudices or anything. They are solely yours. You control them. It's the one thing in your life that you can control is your expectations and how you react to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big difference.
Yeah, and is this something like an exercise that you go through with people to find their expectations? And is this something that can change over time, or is it fixed in people?
I think that in a portion of it is fixed. I think your core expectations are fixed. Your integrity, you don't ever want to lose your integrity. Because once you lose your integrity, then you start to degrade yourself. You start to question everything you do and how you do it and all that. So I think your integrity is something you never lose. But expectations change all the time. We have so many different circumstances. I want you to think about this. Just think in a day how many different expectations you experience. And that's why we don't pay much attention to them, because we have so many so often so quickly that it has to become ingrained in you to be conscious of them and to realize how you're going to react to them. I mean, once I started realizing that that we're an expectation-driven entity in this world, things started to change for me, because every time I have an expectation, now I think about it and react instead of just reacting out of the gut,
Yeah.
and that. So, I mean, it gets complicated and complex, but it's really very simple concept. It's a very, very simple concept.
Yeah, one of the big ones that I think of now is, you touched on the pandemic that we're going through, and now it's on. I don't know if it's a mandatory or now it's an expectation that everyone has to wear a mask when they go into places, and so if that expectation's not met, then other people tend to get feisty or fiery or try to push that on
Defensive.
you. Defensive, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, expectations, I break them down into, we have societal expectations, and those include the laws and the rules that we have to follow during that. And then we have organic expectations, which are our own, core expectations. So, I mean, there's just different, just think of it. I always start, when I speak to large groups of people or small groups of people, I always end with this statement. Just think of this. Everything you do starts with an expectation, and everything that you do stops with an expectation. Because it does. I mean, I challenge people all the time. Tell me one thing you do that is not based in expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we do is based in an expectation. I mean, I've had people say, "Oh, I have an expectation of sex with my wife, or sex with my lover, or whatever that, it is." Yeah, you do. I mean, there's expectations to everything we do. The food we eat, the podcasts we do, the writing we do, everything. We have this expectation in our head before we do it. It's the precursor to every action. Expectation is the precursor to every action that we take.
And is expectation a topic that you got from music and applied it to social life or people? I always hear music is a repetitive pattern, so people build up this expectation of what's going to happen, and good music kind of either meets it or breaks that expectation. And so
and that's the great thing about it. Mine didn't come from music, but that's a great analogy that you've got there with music, because one of the things I tell people all the time, we have a lot of therapists and life coaches that tell people not to expect. Well, it's impossible not to expect. What they're trying to tell people is, don't live to the expectations of others. Because we have parents that tell us, "Oh, you're going to be a lawyer," or parents that tell us, "Oh, you're going to marry Susie Q," or different things that people expect of us. Some of them we have to follow. When we have an employer, there's employee expectations that if we want to stay employed, we have to meet. But I always tell people, you should be challenging your core expectations all the time. You should be raising the bar every single time that you have an expectation, because that's what drives creativity. Every successful, great human being in this world has had the concept in their head that they can break the expectations of other people with their own expectations, and that's how things happen. If we all expected the same, what a boring world we'd live in. Some people just learn and become very successful by taking their own expectations and then breaking every rule there is about them, driving them. And I'm not saying about breaking the rules of integrity and that. I'm talking about the expectations when you're told, I can't do that. You can't do that because no one else is doing it. Well, that's the biggest hogwash there ever was, you know. The reason that people tell you how to expect when other people tell you how to expect is for one sole reason. They want to control you.
Yeah.
Think about advertisers. Think about government. Think about churches. Think about all the social organizations. It's meant, if they can control your expectations, they can control you. And when they control you, they tell you, look at our politics right now. Look at, and I'm not one to talk about politics because I just hate it because it's so full of expectations that are meant not to help people or enhance people, but to control people. I mean, if you vote for so and so, you know, well, he's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You know, he's never done this before. Blah blah blah.
Right.
And you got, you know, this guy over here that can't remember a sentence that he's going to say the next time. Every bit of that is meant. Those expectations are put into your head. So when you go to the polls, you go, oh man, you know, my suggestion to people politically is vote your heart. Vote what you want. If you see somebody that's going to help fulfill the things that you think this society needs, then vote them. You know, don't let the newspapers and the columnists and the pundits all control how you expect this. You know, Trump wasn't expected to win last time. He beat, you know, and he beat the odds, and you know, some people say he didn't, some did, but you know, he broke the mold. He is a mold breaker. This one of the things that I could find to admire about him is that he thinks, he doesn't care what anyone else thinks. And there's, you know, that's a good thing because government needs to be shaken up, in my opinion. Government needs, it's gotten so entrenched in tradition and in just in being what it is. Yeah, and it's just all that. So somebody's got to come in and shake the tree. He certainly shook the tree. I don't agree with everything he does. Sometimes I don't agree with anything he does, but hey, he shook the tree, and I'm all about shaking the tree.
Yeah, well, you got to ruffle some feathers to get some stuff done, I think, sometimes. But as we're talking about expectations, and people tell you to manage your expectations, is it better to have lower expectations and exceed them? Or is it better to have huge expectations and fall short? I mean, it's, I think some people maybe will get down on themselves if they don't meet their expectations, or if they need a boost, then you can set a low bar. I guess, how do you deal with your clients, and what do you teach?
I teach to have high expectations and then learn to manage them, because you have to realize that we are not going to get everything that we want in life, but that doesn't mean you don't try. You know, so what I teach people is to have high expectations. If you want to be the president of the United States, go for it. You know, start working. The idea is to have high expectations, but the reason we write a plan out and have people write plans out for themselves is that we can guide them in the step-by-step goals to get there, or the step-by-step expectations to get there. And there's a difference between goals and expectations. Goals are points that we look to see if we meet. Expectations are ingrained in us. You know, they're just in our hearts and in our souls and in our minds. So that's the difference between an expectation and a goal.
Okay, I might have been confusing the two, or overlapping them a little bit.
Well, and we do. Everybody does, you know. But, you know, when you set high expectations for yourself and you don't achieve it, what have you gained? And this is what I try to teach people. Everything that we attempt to do is meant to be a learning experience. And that's what life is about. The more you can learn, the more that you can suck into your mind and have it as a resource to use later. I mean, I learned things as a kid that I didn't start using until after my wife passed away, because you just learn things and then you're able to reach back and use those learning experiences to get you through. Vietnam was a huge learning experience for me. I could have looked at it as this woe is me, could have been, I went to the VA and doctors would say, oh, you've got PTSD and you've got to do this and this. I don't believe in letting anyone label me. I do not let labels be put upon me. I do not let people tell me I'm sick. I will tell myself if I don't feel well, and I'll deal with it. But I'm just very funny when it comes to people trying to tell me how I am. I hate
Right.
labels. When kids go to school and the teacher uses the word, oh, Johnny over here is slow or stupid or not capable. It's such a Johnny is, if he's told that enough, will believe it. I have a friend in Philadelphia who has 2 sons that are blind. They were born blind. And it's a very complicated disease, and I couldn't explain the word that it has. But I met her when she was on my podcast because she had heard one of my podcasts, and I was talking about expectations, and she just loved it. She thought, this is what I've done with my boys. Her boys play baseball. They play baseball. Wow. in little league.
That's amazing.
And in high school. And you know how they did it? Because their mother would not accept anybody telling them that they can't do it because they're blind. They are such gifted children and have grown into such young, productive men because their mother would not accept the expectations that other people were going to place on her boys as blind. She exceeded that everyone, but she is the first one to agree with me that everything that happened with those boys were meant to teach her husband, and the boys lessons that they could use for the rest of their life. That's my point. That's what it is. When we put labels on people tend to live up to those labels.
Yeah, then is it, in that case, it might have been the mom to kind of give them that confidence or that boost to not accept the label. Is there, how do other people get that confidence in themselves to overcome any label that they might have on them or any challenge that they're facing?
They have to learn how to manage their expectations, because labels are nothing more than expectations that people place on us. So you have to learn if somebody walks up to me and tells me I'm stupid, I'm not going to argue with them or anything, because I can't change that guy's mind. If he thinks I'm stupid, then that's his problem, not mine. And that's the difference. You got to know who. That's why we spend so much time identifying, because once you know who you are and really have confidence in it, and confidence in the expectation that you can do anything you want, you just have to work for it.
Right. So it's almost it's their expectation of you rather than your own expectation of yourself.
Exactly. In the racial issues that are going on in the country right now, in my book I write about a term that I use. It's collective diminished expectations, which is what advertisers, churches, different people in society, politicians all use to control people. Collective diminished expectations. It's how, we always ask about how, and this is my personal opinion, some people don't don't agree with it, but I believe that when the Jews were enslaved, you know, and the black people were enslaved, the way that it gets done is you convince the population that the value of the person or people that you're trying to enslave has no value. Because people, I've often heard, when I was young and I was in New Jersey, we grew up around a lot of Jewish families, and I always heard people say, you know, how could so many people be sent to the gas chambers? How did that happen without the rest of the world rising up against, you know, against the Nazis, you know, against the Third Reich? How did that happen? Well, Hitler convinced the population, the German population, the European population in many areas, that the Jews had no value. And once you devalue somebody and they start to believe it, you know, you have control over them. Now, they used a lot of different tactics. And I'm not saying that, you know, there was just a whole lot more to go into it. But the reason the German people did not fight it is because they actually believed that the Jews had no value, which is ridiculous. We know that's not true. Every human being that walks the face of this earth has value. Every person, regardless of color, religion, whatever it is, every person has value. They have something to offer this. That's what I preach. It's getting people to believe it and getting people to get fired up about it in themselves. I want to instill in people that you can do anything you want to do. Anything you want to do, anything you want to be, you can do it. You just have to be willing to work for it.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. That's beautiful. So you mentioned your time in the music industry. I'm interested in music too. So it's just what were you doing there, and what kind of lessons did you learn? Who did you work with? Just
when I was when I got home from college and when I was in the Marine Corps at 32nd Street Naval Station, I was a brig guard in the brig. And after I got out, I wanted to stay in San Diego and go to San Diego State. So that's what I did. I enrolled in San Diego State, and I was playing baseball for the Marine Corps at the time, and I was doing lots of things. But when I started going to San Diego State, I got a roommate, and he had a band, and he was a music major, and he was really, really talented. He built harpsichords from scratch. He built guitars. I mean, he wrote classical music. He wrote rock and roll. He was just very gifted. He could literally pick up an instrument and play it without ever having a lesson. Just gifted. So anyway, he would come home, and I'd come home from school and get ready to go work, because I worked at Mercy Mental Health at the time. And he'd come home at night, and my shift ended at 11, 3 to 11, and he would be coming in from playing a gig somewhere or doing something, and he'd say, golly, I said, we just can't find the next job, and blah, 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 you know. So I said to him, I said, hey, you're looking for a manager. I'll manage it. He said, you don't have any time now. How are you going to do that? So I said, if you want to do something, you'll find time to do it. Right. So I started managing his band, and we got to the point where I had them booked so much around San Diego, Orange County, and LA that they were just going up and down the coast all the time, and they were working a lot. And,
did you have those connections already, or did you have to reach out to all the venues?
I'm great at cold calling because I've never met a stranger. You know, I just love people. So I would walk into the clubs and say, hey, we got a band. They said, well, could they audition, or do you have a tape? And I'd hand them a tape, or we'd set up an audition, and they'd go, good band, man, we'd like to have them. Okay. And then, of course, once that happens, the reputation starts building. Mm-hmm. And once they get into one or two of the clubs, the other club owners go, oh man, they draw big. you know. And club
Yeah.
owners, it's all about drawing people in,
Right.
to
Ticket
buy
sales.
ticket sales, buy drinks, blah, 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 buy
Mhm.
meals. So we started playing. Well, then all the other bands that were trying to get gigs everywhere started coming to me. So I ended up with 5 bands, managing 5 bands. And it really was simple for me because I just kept rotating
Yeah.
through the clubs that
So you
through the
had,
circle.
did you get the reputation that you knew quality talent, and so they trusted you that that next band was going to be just as good as the first band?
Absolutely. I mean, it was built on that. We,
So they were actually
the,
putting an expectation on you that you already knew what you're doing and you could spot the talent.
yep, yep. So what at the time it was when they were doing big stadium events. So we at Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego, they were doing a big Friday night till Sunday night concert. Just band after band. Well, the big names were all coming in, uh, Dr. Hook, Jesse Colin Young. I mean, there was just a whole bunch of artists. Um, I can't even, James Taylor,
Right.
just all, I mean,
Yeah.
The Grateful Dead, I mean, Jefferson Starship, or Jefferson Airplane at the time, but they were all just coming in and they just, play there, but they wanted to have bands in between.
Mm-hmm.
So the promoter knew me from my club experience. He said, can I get your bands to come in? We'll pay you to come in and we'll put you in between because all the local people know who these bands are and it would be great fillers. So we were doing that on this weekend thing, and Jose Feliciano's manager was there with Jose, and he asked me. He said, "Wow," he said, "You got some great bands." He said, "What are you going to do when you graduate?" And at that point, I only had like 6 months before we were going to graduate, and I said to him, I said, "I have no clue what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'm going to work in mental health. I don't know if I'm going to work in music or whatever." And he handed me his card and he said, "When you make up your mind, let me know."
Mm-hmm.
So graduation came and all that stuff, and I still didn't know what I was going to do. And I gave him a call and he said, "Come up and talk to us." And he said, I want to offer you a position as now National Talent Coordinator. And he said, "All you will do is scout talent around the world for us to assign to our management company. And we'll pay you X number of dollars. We'll give you a brand new Mercedes to drive when you're here." So they bought
Wow.
me a brand new 280 SL, which was the 2-seater,
Uh-huh.
and gave me an apartment in Newport Beach.
So would you
And
say that was your skill, was to find the talent? Do you think that's what you were best at?
oh yeah, it was definitely to find the talent and negotiate it, to
Mm-hmm.
get them to realize that we had a lot to offer them. So I did that, and in the midst of doing that, we were also booking talent, our new bands and stuff into Las Vegas at the time. So we had new artists going in there. So I got to work with some big people, meet some people. I met Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Roy Clark, and got to go to all the events in Vegas with them and go backstage with them and have fun and go out afterwards. And, we would sit and, they would finish their last show sometimes at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And we would all go out and have drinks and eat and all that kind of stuff. So I got to associate with them all the time. And it was just a great experience. And that's what I walked away from when I met my wife. I walked away from that. I was actually, 2 record companies were wanting to hire me in their A&R departments,
Wow. Yeah.
which is a big deal. Back
Must
in
have been
those
tough
days,
to walk away from.
really it was very easy because I was so in love with my wife.
Yeah.
It was so easy. That's part of what expectation therapy is about. I am so good at transitioning into things. I don't have the fear that I was going to be losing anything. I was gaining everything. I was
Yeah.
gaining the woman of my dreams. I knew, even though I didn't know what I was going to do. And out of that, I started my own business, and for
Hmm.
30 some years, just we lived happily. I mean, I have no fear of doing things. I have no fear of just dropping, something that, and I don't mean dropping it in a bad way, but I don't have any
Right.
reservations about,
Transitioning or
yeah,
pivoting.
transitioning or doing. I can, I went from working, or owning a construction company to becoming an author, writer, and working back in the coaching field and coaching people.
Yeah. So what
People
was
go,
that?
how do you do that?
Yeah. And so how long did it take you to build expectation theory for it to be a viable business for you to make money and live off of?
I
Because it
mean,
seems like I'm trying to do something very similar, where I'm just kind of at the infant stage where I'm just starting out my podcast. I got 18 episodes. I've got a blog going. I got ideas for books, but just kind of a time frame for how you built your company.
let's see. I started in 2010, so it's almost 10 years now
Mm-hmm.
of just slowly building. You gotta be patient, especially with this, because there are so many people doing podcasts now. There are so many people writing books. There are so many. I mean, I read the other day that every day 10,000 new books come out.
Oh
Every
my
day,
gosh.
every day worldwide. So, you just got to be you, do what you do, and be faithful to it. There's nothing easy. I mean, none of this has been easy for me,
Mm-hmm.
but yet it's easy because I don't take the pressure of the expectations of, you know, that I expect to be a bestseller today. My advice to anybody getting started right now is be patient and be wise with your money, because I put out money and spent money on stuff that just didn't have any value. I mean, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people out there that tell you that they can do this for you, do that for you, and you just got to do what you do. You just got to be faithful to who you are, and trust what you do, and trust and believe in who you are, you know, and just keep at it. It's the person that stays at it the longest, I think, is the
Right.
you just build credibility, build integrity, credibility, and those things. It's not an easy industry right now. I
No,
mean,
yeah,
because
a
it
lot
is
of
so flooded.
competition.
Yeah, a lot of competition and a lot of different things. I mean, we all dream of being, Tony Robbins and all that, but you know, I just never had that expectation. I never had the expectation I wanted to be like Tony Robbins or be Tony Robbins or anything. I don't. I want to be me, and if people accept who I am, fine. If they don't accept who I am, that's fine too. I can't please everybody,
Yeah.
but I'm here to please me.
What do you think, just kind of going back to the music for a second, just now, so it's such an interesting time that uh, we have no live events right now. Do you think it's everything is more online rather than live? Or I guess live online. I guess it's kind of a weird kind of, which direction do you think the world's going in? It's
Well, I think that live music will always be a big draw. I mean, there's nothing like going to a concert and seeing the Grateful Dead or seeing Celine Dion or whoever you want to see, because we all have different tastes. I think there's always going to be a draw there. But for the rest of everything, like education, I think that you're looking at the transformation of education right now. It's going to go very much to online. I think the universities are realizing. I think that schools are realizing, but more so, I think that we have so many people out there that are now have doctorates and master's degrees and all that. That I don't want to devalue what they've done, because I think that education is very important. But the biggest educator in my life has been living life, not what I
Hmm.
learned out of not what I learned out of a book, because that's that's very confined. What you learn out of a book, there is no confinement in what you learn in life. That's why we see so many young people now traveling so much and doing all the things they want to do. It's beautiful, because that's where the learning comes in. You can have all the book knowledge in the world, but if you can't match it with the practicality of living everyday life, it really has no meaning. And I feel sorry for people that have gone to college and got PhDs and now can't feel fulfilled and don't feel fulfilled and all that, because fulfillment comes from managing and living life. That's what it's
Hmm.
about, not about having Dr. So and so. My wife is a nurse anesthetist, so she works with a lot of doctors, and she's almost a doctor herself, really. I mean, she does anesthesia just like everybody else, But when in dealing with a lot of the medical community that I see, you know, I I hear a lot of doctors saying they can't wait to retire, because it has been so stressful for them. And we think of this doctor so and so as being, you know, this glorious job and everything, but they're under a tremendous amount of stress, and the lifestyle alone, to maintain the lifestyle that they have to maintain with the big houses, the Mercedes, and all those kinds of things. And not all doctors choose that path. I mean, I know doctors that drive Hondas, and live in the house just like mine,
Yeah.
and we're all different, and it's whatever you want. But a
Right.
lot of, I think, it happens with the medical community, particularly with doctors. They're living to the expectations of everybody around them. This
Right.
is the expectation that I have the 6-bedroom house on Lake Austin, and I drive the Mercedes. Well, let's change that expectation and have happy doctors instead of stressed out doctors.
Yeah. Well, big shout out to the healthcare workers right now, because I know they're going through a lot,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
even the people that, selective healthcare is almost canceled, and so I know they're struggling as well. And so it's a rough time for a lot of people out there in that industry. um but I've always,
It,
yeah, go ahead.
it's a rough time for everybody. I mean, we
Mhm.
are in the biggest phase of transition mankind's ever known. I mean, particularly this country,
Mhm.
where our expectations have been so set in stone, that right now is the time for people to learn how to manage those expectations, because things are going to really change over the next 10 to 15 years, I think, tremendously. So,
Yeah, I would agree. And going back to that one conversation, I think the more you understand the internet and digital, the more it's going to be helpful for this new future that we're kind of being pushed in. Um, but also, to touch on something else you said there was, when you're getting the PhD and you're in school for so long, I think what I've experienced is, um, when I was lost for a while, I always reached out and I was looking for something, and I was always consuming, like, either YouTube videos or education videos, and you're always trying to learn more. And I think when it switched to when I was producing, like you're saying, living life, is when I got the most education, actually. um, is when I was actually doing things, instead of when I was just sitting there trying to learn. It's when I'm actually producing, when I'm making videos, or when I'm blogging, or when I'm producing music, or whatever I'm doing. I learn most by actually doing. And if you're, that's why I think kind of education system is kind of almost backwards, because you're not doing a lot. You're just kind of sitting there consuming. You're not really producing anything. And so I think that's a big shift that happened for me. And I realized I was happier too when I was producing and when I'm creating something. And so I think just wanted to point that out, because what you
Oh,
said kind of.
I think that that's great. I think that's great because one of the things that I teach is I teach in our solidification phase when we're writing the plan for you. It's meant to make you become a doer of deeds. Start doing stuff. Doesn't matter. It's great to talk about it, but the only way you really learn and you really get into the meat of it is by doing. When I talk to high school kids and I finish with them, everything with them, I'll always tell them, I want you to become a doer and go make doo-doo all over the earth. Kids love it. They just, they crack up, but it's such a truth. Don't talk about it. Just go do it. I mean, Nike had it right. I think it was Nike. Wasn't it Nike just said, just go do it?
Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. So what if you fail? So what if you stumble? Think of what you've gained. Think of what you gained, not what you've lost,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's pretty much been my mindset since I was 9 years old. I learned that it was everything relied on me. I had to teach myself everything. And in doing so, I really saw the value in just doing stuff. If I would have lived to what other people were expecting of me, my parents put no expectations on their children, none. I mean, I could do anything I wanted. They had no expectations, and I didn't have to do homework. I didn't have to do anything. The only way I did it is if I wanted it done.
Yeah.
So I learned to do it. I learned to read.
A huge expectation that I had to change for myself was, it felt like I couldn't do it unless it's perfect, because I had this kind of perfectionist. And so I had to change. Everything's not perfect. And so just doing it is better than it being perfect, or good enough is good enough. So it's kind of, it almost sounds like you're slacking, or you don't care about the quality, but it's almost, I had to change that in myself, because I wasn't getting anything done because I didn't have that just do it mindset.
Yeah, well, perfection doesn't exist. There is no such thing as perfection. I mean, just let's face it, there is no such thing as, somebody can pick anything apart that we do. But one of the other things that I wanted to bring up, and it just went out of my mind, that's right, we're gonna have to, I can't remember what it was.
That's fine. I want to be respectful of your time, and just acknowledge you, Art, for everything that you're doing, and the life that you've lived. You've been through so much, and your service in Vietnam, and you're devoting yourself to a cause bigger than yourself by teaching others this expectation therapy, and teaching them to follow their dreams and have high expectations and reach for the stars. And I think what you're doing is great, and I just want to acknowledge you for that.
Well, thank you for that, and I really appreciate it. And I do it because I care about others. I care about, I mean, others are more important than me's, So that's what I do it for everybody. We got some great things coming up on the latter part of August, and I'm launching my new online course August 24th. Also, my book is coming out on audiobook August 21st. And my birthday is August 26th. I'll be 73.
Oh, awesome. It's a huge month for you. Congratulations on
big deal.
On the course, the book, the birthday. I hope you have a great one. Where can people find you online if they want to check out all this great stuff?
I'm on all social media. It's either on Twitter, it's My Expectation, Facebook, Expectation Therapy, or Art Costello is my homepage. But my website is expectationtherapy.com. You can email me at art@expectationtherapy.com with questions, and I'm here for you. I'm here for everybody to help you any way I can. So that's what I want to do.
Thank you, Art, for your time today, and hopefully we can do it again.
We will. I guarantee it. We're home buddies, man. You're in Austin, right?
I'm in Austin, yeah.
So am I. So once this COVID thing is over, we'll have to go to lunch.
For sure. I know this original was supposed to be in person, but then Corona happened, and everything got thrown out of order. So yeah, hopefully the next one we could do in person.
We will. So
yeah. All right. Thanks, Art.
okay, it's been a pleasure.